"Get out," he said, and the door slammed in my face so hard the windows shook. My suitcase hit a puddle, and my wedding ring felt heavier than the rain pressing on my skin. If that had been you, 7 years married thrown into the storm like yesterday's trash, what would you have done? I stood there a breath too long, rain crawling down the back of my neck, lightning opening the sky like a wound. Inside that house, the woman who called me cursed was probably smiling, and the man who once promised forever was already rehearsing a story that made him the hero. I picked up that soaked suitcase, looked at the dark clouds, and whispered to nobody and to God. At the same time, one day you'll know the truth. Then I walked away because there was nowhere else to go. Let me tell you how we got there, because doors don't slam like that without a buildup. I met Johnson at a friend's wedding. He was 25, handsome in that clean shirt, big dream kind of way, a natural talker who could sell ice to a snowman. I was 23, quiet but not shy, the kind of woman who saves receipts and remembers birthdays without reminders. He asked me to dance, then asked for my number, then asked me to marry him under a mango tree with a thin gold ring that left a green circle on my finger and the biggest smile on my face. Those first years felt like sunlight and sweet tea. You know what I mean. We rented a small house with crooked floors and a stubborn gate. I painted the living room pale yellow because it was his favorite color, and every morning that room looked like it was trying its best to be cheerful. He started a tiny electronics business. I worked as a secretary, and when the money ran low, I stretched beans and rice into something that tasted like hope. We talked about kids the way people do, names we liked, who we'd resemble, who would be strict, who would spoil. Year 1, no baby. People said, be patient. Year 2, still nothing. People said, it's God's timing. Year 3, the whispers started, not loud, the kind that travel under doors and into your pillow. Year 4, louder. Year 5, his mother, Mrs. Margaret, moved those whispers into our kitchen. If you've never had someone stir your soup while stirring up your life, I pray you never do. A woman's job is to give her husband children, she would say, eyes on the pot, words aimed at my heart. What kind of wife are you? I worked harder, cooked bigger meals, kept the house cleaner, smiled thinner. Johnson changed like milk in the sun, a little sour at first, then spoiled if you left it out too long. Less hand-holding, more silence. Less we, more my mother says. Pride is a quiet poison. It doesn't bubble, it just turns sweet tea bitter and convinces you that's how tea is supposed to taste. If it were you, what would you have done? Beg for tests, I tried. Let's go to the doctor together, I said. He laughed, that sharp laugh pride loves. A real man doesn't need tests. Everyone knows it's the woman's fault. That night, it rained like the sky was washing the street, and 7 years after we said forever, he threw my suitcase into the storm and told me to leave. Not for a drive, not for a night. Leave. I sat in a bus shelter till morning, shoes squishing on the concrete, calling the one person who would answer like I still mattered. My cousin Veronica always answers. Even half asleep, she sounded like steel wrapped in velvet. First bus to Riverside City, she said. I'll meet you. I don't want to be a burden, I whispered, because when you've been blamed for long enough, you start apologizing for breathing. You're not a burden, you're family, she said. And I cried until the wet on my face and the wet in the air felt like the same water. Riverside City was louder, busier, full of strangers who didn't know my shame. Veronica's apartment was small, and bright plants lined up on the balcony like little flags that said, "Life lives here." For a week I slept, cried, tried to eat, woke at 2 a.m. with the urge to apologize to a ghost. After 7 days, Veronica set a bowl of soup in front of me and told me the thing that moved me from the couch back into my body. You need purpose, Mary. I work at Riverside General. We're hiring an administration. Put on something that says I'm ready even if you don't feel it yet. Mrs. Patricia, head of admin, wore glasses on a chain and had the kind of eyes that have seen everything and still choose kindness. We need help in accounting, she said. Can you start Monday? Numbers made sense to me. They tell you the truth even when people won't. I showed up early, stayed late, color-coded folders, balanced ledgers, and little by little I felt the weight of someone else's blame loosen its grip. One Saturday, the hospital ran a community outreach in a crowded gym. Folding tables, blood pressure cuffs, nurses with clipboards, kids waving lollipops like tiny flags. I was at the registration desk writing names, checking boxes, keeping 100 moving parts from crashing. That's when he stopped in front of me. White coat, stethoscope, kind eyes. I'm Dr. Gideon, he said. OBGYN. Thank you for keeping this whole circus running. He smiled, not like a man who wanted something, but like a man who noticed effort. Throughout the day, I watched him with patience. He listened, he explained without condescension, he never rushed. People left his table with their shoulders a little lower and their faces a little lighter. You could feel the room change around him. At the end, he carried 2 heavy boxes, like they were empty, and asked how I was liking the city. It's different, I said, still learning my way. Starting fresh can be the best kind of hard, he said. And I believed him because it sounded like something he'd learned the expensive way. A few weeks later, rain came down in sheets right at quitting time, and I stood at the door staring at 3 blocks of weather between me and the bus stop. Mary, wait, he called, appearing with an umbrella like a plot device. I'll drive you. I started to say, I don't want to be a burden. He cut that off with a look that said nonsense. In the car, he turned on soft music, asked about my day, not my history. Then gently, he mentioned he'd been engaged once long ago. It didn't work out. What about you? He asked. I was married, I said, not anymore. He didn't ask why. Sometimes things don't work out the way we plan, he said, but that doesn't mean better things aren't waiting. And the way he said it made me believe he'd seen sunrise after a very long night. The hospital threw an anniversary party. Balloons, questionable punch, good people trying to look fancy under fluorescent lights. Veronica shoved me into an emerald dress and told me I owned the color. Across the room I saw Gideon in a black suit, and he saw me, and soon we were on the dance floor, doing the gentle sway you do when you're both trying not to step on toes. You have a gentle spirit, he said, like he was offering a fact, not a compliment. I didn't know what to do with that, so I said thank you, and tried not to cry on his tie. Pattern interrupt. I fainted. It wasn't dramatic. The room slid sideways. I caught the wall, blinked, and next thing I remember, I was in his office with a cool cloth on my forehead, and his brow knit like a worried sweater. You're dehydrated, working too hard. Maybe anemic, he said. When was your last full checkup? I shrugged. Years. He was kind but firm. Let me run some tests, Mary. I started to say I'm fine. He said I'm your friend, but I'm also a doctor, and I want you well. So I said yes. For a week, I walked around with my stomach clenched, bracing for a verdict I thought I already knew. When I sat down across from him, he started with the easy part. You're a bit anemic. We'll fix that with iron. Then his eyes softened. I also did a fertility screen. My throat closed. He leaned forward. Mary, there is nothing wrong with you. You are healthy. You are fertile. I laughed. The thin kind of laugh that wears panic like perfume. That can't be right, I whispered. 7 years, no baby, everyone said. He shook his head. In many couples with trouble, the issue is on the male side, he said, but pride keeps a lot of men from testing. He let the words sit there until they found a chair. I put my face in my hands and let 7 years of shame slide off me in one long, shaking cry. If you've ever carried a weight that didn't belong to you, you know the weird float you get when you set it down. You feel taller and smaller at the same time. I left that office different. Veronica squeezed me till my ribs complained, said I knew it, I knew it. I promised myself I wouldn't let anger be the story I told. Not because they deserved grace, but because I deserved peace. Coffee in the cafeteria turned into dinner after work. Dinner turned into Saturday walks by the river. He didn't rush me. He didn't try to fix me. He asked good questions, listened to real answers, and one afternoon on a park bench, he took my hand and said the quiet part loud, "I've fallen in love with you." I thought my heart was a burned house, I said, but somehow I'm hearing music in it again. We got married 2 years later. Small, beautiful, no stage lights, just people who meant it saying, "We believe in you." Then came a 3-inch strip of plastic that turned the world upside down. Morning sickness walked in like it paid rent. Veronica dragged me to the pharmacy, and we bought 3 tests because sometimes you need a choir singing the same note. All positive. I wrapped them in a little box with a note that said, "You're going to be a daddy." He opened it, looked at me, looked back at the tests, and then he laughed and cried at the same time. Yeah, that happened. A week later, the ultrasound tech turned the screen and grinned. Not 1 baby. Not 2. Triplets. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Carrying 3 is like running a marathon while balancing a grocery bag on your belly. Every step counts. My back ached, my feet swelled. I lived on pillows and prayers. Gideon turned into a one-man spa. Foot rubs, soup reminders that I was his hero. Meanwhile, back in the city, I left Johnson's story bent under its own weight. He'd married again. Pretty sharp, allergic to budgets. Money leaked. Peace left. A year passed without a baby, then another. Maybe we should see a doctor, he suggested. Why, she shot back, I'm healthy. If there's a problem, it's you. Pride hates mirrors. Sitting in a clinic, hearing low count and likely long standing, he finally met the truth I'd begged to meet years ago. I wasn't there to see any of that. I was in an operating room hearing 3 cries minutes apart. 2 boys, Daniel and Samuel, whose eyebrows looked like opinions, and a girl, Grace, whose name fit her the second she arrived. People call everything a miracle these days, but I've never seen a miracle argue with 3 heartbeats on a monitor and 3 warm bodies on my chest. We were exhausted and happy in the way only new parents know. Sleep-deprived, milk-stained, grinning at nothing. When the fog lifted, Trinity Health Foundation was born at our kitchen table. Free education and testing for couples, both partners, no blame game, just truth and compassion. We held workshops, paid for appointments, handed out pamphlets that said conversation saves marriages. In 2 years, we grew from a folding table to an office with a waiting room full of people who looked bent and left a little straighter. An invitation came with gold letters asking me to give the keynote at the City Business Excellence Awards. Community impact. I said yes, then practiced in the mirror, then practiced in the kitchen, while the triplets turned dish towels into capes. The night of the ceremony, the ballroom sparkled like it had a budget for light. I wore royal blue. The kids wore little suits and a white dress that made strangers stop us in hallways. And then I saw him. 3rd row, older, smaller eyes that wouldn't rise to meet mine. Johnson. My heart stuttered, then steadied. At the podium, I told the truth. The rain, the suitcase, the 7 years, the bus shelter. The voice of a doctor who handed me oxygen in the form of facts. I said we have a habit of blaming women first and testing men last. I said pride is breaking homes that biology could have healed if we'd only let it. Do you think that's fair? I asked, the way we teach our daughters to carry shame that doesn't belong to them. Is that the legacy we want? The room stood up when I finished. Not for me, for the story. In the parking lot, he found me under a humming light. "Mary," he said, voice cracked, "I heard your speech. I went to a doctor. It was me. I am so sorry." Tears traced lines that looked like they might be permanent. I listened. I didn't rescue. He asked if forgiveness could mean a second chance. I told him forgiveness means I don't carry the anger. It doesn't mean I forget who I became to survive. He looked at the car where my husband buckled our kids in and said that should have been my life. "No," I said, "because you wanted children to prove something to other people. This family is not a billboard. If it were you, what would you have done with that apology? Right there under that light." A week later, his mother came to my office, smaller, frailer, a cane tapping the floor like punctuation. She tried to give me an envelope of money for the foundation, said she was sick and sorry and couldn't die with this guilt. I pushed the envelope back and gave her a job instead. Use your voice. Tell your friends to stop weaponizing tradition. Tell your sons to make the appointment. Tell your church to choose compassion over rumor. She cried, and I put a hand on her shoulder and told her I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, because I needed the space in my chest for air. Years passed, quick and long at the same time. The triplets turned 8. Daniel reads like breathing, Samuel runs like the ground is a trampoline. Grace draws people with hearts bigger than their bodies and says that's on purpose. Trinity expanded to 3 cities. On a warm Saturday in the park, Gideon asked if I ever thought of Johnson. Sometimes I said, I heard he moved away. I hope he found peace. That's gracious, he smiled. I told him what I tell every woman who pulls me aside after a talk. Bitterness is a room with no windows. Forgiveness is a key you hand yourself. Boundaries are the door you keep locked, even when the person who hurt you is knocking with flowers. Before I let you go, let me say the thing I wish someone had said to me sooner. Test both people. Talk honestly. Don't hand your life to pride because you're scared of a result. Don't let anyone label you cursed because they're afraid of a mirror. And if you're the one who did the hurting, make the call not for a reunion you haven't earned but for the apology you owe. Then do the work that proves you mean it. Here's where I know we might disagree, and I want to hear you. I forgave a man who didn't deserve it, and I did not take him back. I speak publicly about compassion, and I hold a boundary like a guardrail on a cliff. Hypocrisy or wisdom, soft heart or strong spine. Do you think a public apology erases a private history? Do we fail marriages because of biology, or because of pride that refuses to look biology in the eye? Thank you for walking with me through the rain, the room, the revelations. If this story touched you, stick with the channel and hit subscribe, share it with someone who might need a little light, and drop a comment. Do you think I was right to forgive but not return? What would you have done in that parking lot? And if you've lived a version of this, tell us what helped you find your way back to yourself. Your truth might be the key someone else needs to walk free.